Welcome to the channel, guys. My name is Jess. So recent NFP data has sent the entire risk asset market tumbling, with S&P 500 dropping 12% in the last week and sending Bitcoin to the edge of a cliff. There is some really crucial price action developing on the short time frame charts for Bitcoin right now, and the next few days could signal the start of a potential bear market. We're going to dive into the charts today and talk about exactly what you need to be looking out for, including the next high time frame targets. As always, before we jump in, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And join my free Telegram for more regular Bitcoin analysis. If you're a trader and you're interested in my VIP channel, be sure to message me on Telegram. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Alrighty, guys. So a couple of days ago on Friday night, for those of us in Australia, we had NFP data come out. And for those of you guys who don't know, it's non-farm payroll. So that's the amount of jobs being created in the market, with some exclusions. But generally provides a pretty good indication of how the job market's going and how the US economy is going. And generally speaking, broadly speaking, with NFP being very high, it is a good indicator for the economy, right? So there is lots of jobs being created and, it is a good sign. But it also means that inflation is generally going to be a little bit higher, right? Because there's more spending on jobs, for example. And with the economy kind of growing and heading in that trajectory, moving into a period where people are looking towards getting interest rate cuts, right? We had our first cut all the way back in December, was it? When the job market was going really, really poorly. And ever since then, we've sort of been in this limbo, waiting for when the Fed is going to actually introduce the rest of the cuts that we were supposed to see throughout 2025, right? So right now, we stand at around maybe 2 cuts this year. So 25 times 2, so 50 basis point cut. And one of the ways we're going to get that is, of course, moving towards the Fed's interest rate target, inflation target at 2%, or seeing such a weak job market that the Fed is forced to then cut rates once again to stimulate the economy. So that's obviously not what has happened, right? If we take a look at the results from last Friday, the actual results for NFP was 228,000, which is well above forecast at 135, consensus at 135, and the forecast at $100,000. So in terms of moving towards interest rates, this was very, very bearish for the risk asset market, right? So S&P saw a massive tumble. We're on a weekly chart here. We saw a 12% drop, nearly 12% drop across the week from the wick high down to where we're currently sitting at around 5,000. And Bitcoin as well saw a little tiny bit of a tumble. We can see that green candle there wicked all the way down. That happened earlier on the week. And then after the news, we saw a continued short time frame, sort of very, very slow move downwards across the last couple of days. So as it stands right now, Bitcoin is truly on the edge of quite a critical cliff, right? If we drop much lower, which we'll dive into the video today, we risk potentially entering a high time frame bear market. So let's dive into the charts today and talk about the recent developments on the short time frame, because there's a couple things happening over here, and then what that would mean on the high time frame charts as well. So to get a better understanding of the macro positioning of Bitcoin over here, let's zoom out on the weekly time frame to take a look at what's been going on. So over the last couple of months, right, throughout the entirety of 2025, Bitcoin hasn't been looking all that great. We can see here that the macro positioning of Bitcoin is not looking all that bullish. Throughout the entirety of 2025, we have been traveling in a very, very distinct and aggressive downtrend, right? And if you zoom in on the daily chart, you can see repetitive rejections from that downtrend. For example, in this most recent last 2 weeks, we saw 2 retests of that downtrend, and in both instances, we failed to push above and actually flip the charts to being bullish, right? And if we take a look down here at RSI and momentum, we can see that throughout this entirety of, consolidation, as soon as Bitcoin sort of pushed above this 91K region, momentum has been steadily dropping, right? And that has led to, first of all, the loss of this weekly range over here from 93 to 104,000. And after seeing that aggressive correction after the loss of the weekly range, we moved into this next weekly range down here, starting at 80,000 and ending at $86,000. And as Bitcoin sort of continues to ladder down until we break above the downtrends over here, flip momentum to being positive and flip the charts to being positive as well, the more likely scenario across the next macro period is going to be continued downward movements. Now, this is where it gets sort of critical. So if we take a look at RSI, we can see that we are, first of all, very close to once again retesting 44.41 on the oscillator. And 44.41 represents the, baseline for bullish momentum across the entirety of the accumulation phase for Bitcoin, right? Ever since topping or bottoming out at $16,000, the push above 44.41 has remained consistent for the entirety of this sort of macro uptrend that we've been experiencing over here, right? So if we drop below 44.41, that is a really big red flag that sort of baseline for bullish momentum has dropped, right? And we are more likely than not going to be entering into a phase of de-accumulation or a high time frame, potentially bear market. Sorry, that arrow is very exaggerated. I don't think we're going to 33,000, but that's just an indication of the downward trajectory that we're going in. And also, if we take a look at the price action over here, just as we had a massive volume gap below this prior weekly range, we have another one right below this next weekly range, right? So again, confirming that if we see a close on the weekly time frame below $80,000, we're very likely to see the next aggressive leg downwards towards the end of that volume gap at 74 to 73, this next level of macro support, right? So things are looking objectively quite bad for Bitcoin. And in this drop, it's also likely then that we see momentum fall below 44.41. So with all that in mind, we can see that Bitcoin has had or is going through quite a critical stage in its price action where we are very, very close to potentially what could be a very bearish segment of price action. Now, aside from our weekly range being that horizontal structure and the RSI, we also have the Gaussian channel on the weekly time frame and the 50 EMA or 50 EMA input into the market cipher A to confirm this sort of critical position of Bitcoin as well, right? So historically, when we've seen sort of high time frame periods of extended potentially bearish consolidation, right? For example, when we chopped all the way from March to October in 2024 and everything was sort of starting to look quite bearish, what we did was retest the Gaussian channel and the 50 EMA, and in both instances we saw a bounce, which eventually led to the breakout of this period of consolidation, our descending channel structure, and an aggressive push upwards to this rally over here, all the way up to $106,000. Now, in the next couple of weeks, it does look like Bitcoin is once again approaching those sort of critical levels of high time frame support. So in the instance that we lose our weekly range and we fall to $74,000 and we enter the Gaussian channel and fall below the 50 EMA, it's again a really big warning sign. We really need to either bounce there or see, the start of a bear market. So if we corroborate the analysis that we're seeing on the high time frame charts with what's going on the smaller time frames, we can start to identify, warnings and trigger points in real time that's going to affect those high time frame charts and the high time frame trajectory of Bitcoin. So over here on the 4-hour time frame, we can see pretty clearly that we are traveling in some sort of horizontal structure over here, right? This channel where our upper end of resistance starts at 87 and ends at 88 with sell side liquidity at 88.7, right? You guys can see those levels. By the way, if you don't want me reading out these numbers, sometimes I feel like it's probably really annoying to be just getting all these numbers like yelled at you, please tell me, because then I can just draw them in and then we can leave it like that. I can just say that there's resistance. And then we have support down here, the base of our horizontal channel at 81,000. So the base of our weekly range sits around 80,638, right? That's this dotted black trend line over here. And we can see pretty clearly that in the event that we have a breakdown from our horizontal channel over here, resulting in a measured move that takes us right down to that next base of support on the high time frame at 74,000, the one we mapped out on the weekly time frame, and below our range low as well, we would see a breakdown of the weekly range, right? If this continues to sustain, for example, if we drop below, retest, reject, some sort of laddering event like that, we would very clearly lose the base of our weekly range and hence trigger that high time frame trajectory of bearish events. In the flip side though, if we push above the top of our range and buy side liquidity closing above that at 88,800, that would mean that we were able to flip these charts to being bullish, right? And push us above both the 2025 downtrend on the daily time frame, as well as this next level of resistance at 91 to 92,000. The measured move takes us to around 94, 96,000, right? So that would be a really, really huge move. And clearly the short time frame has some really sort of high time frame implications right now. It's looking really, really crucial. So let's take a look at what the charts are saying, which scenario is more probable. So if we take a look at the hourly chart to look at the probabilities, what we're seeing here is actually quite interesting. So over the last couple of days, we can see Bitcoin has lost the midline for our horizontal channel, right? Falling below support at 95,000. We can see it acting as a consistent level of resistance, flip to support, supports the 88,000 retest, and dropping below the midline supports a move back down instead to 81,000, the range low. So after losing this level, we've seen a retest of 81,000, and ever since then, we've seen a small sort of uptrend developing on these charts. We've had an instance of bullish absorption, right? We've seen higher lows on the charts despite increasing selling pressure. So that is a vaguely good sign on the small time frames. But we're also seeing that we have been so far unable to push past that level of resistance at $85,000. So over the next couple of days, if we're able to, we've broken above this little RSI downtrend over here, push above 85,000, reestablish it as support, and go in for another strong retest of $88,000, that would flip these short time frame charts. First of all, with our small time frame target at 88, and then pushing above that, of course, 91 and 94,000. But on the flip side, if we continue to reject off $85,000 and repetitively retest $81,000, it's more likely then that we are going to see the breakdown of this channel, right? As we lose sort of levels of resistance on the levels of support on the way down. Alrighty guys, that is a wrap on the analysis today. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. If you guys liked the video or you learned something, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And join my free Telegram channel for more regular updates. If you're a trader and you're interested in my VIP channel, don't forget to contact me on Telegram for more details. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!